The TVET colleges were formally constituted in 2002 when 152 former technical colleges were merged with colleges of education and skills centres to form 50 new FET colleges with 165 campus sites around the country. So in addition to native courses, which are also known as Report 191 or N courses, since 2007, the TVET colleges have been offering MCV courses, which is a 3-year full-time course of study offered in 19 vocational fields in areas such as financial services, IT, business management, tourism, etc. Both the NATED and the MCV offer training at the levels 2, 3, and 4 in the MQF. And are open to school leavers after grade 9. Now, some background to this research. So when NCV was introduced, a large expansion of the TVET colleges were expected. And one of the challenges faced by DHET was how to manage this expansion without destabilizing the sector, which was quite fragile at the time. They also realized around that time, about 2009, that there was a lack of reliable data around the role of TVET colleges in relation to the supply of skills. So in order to fill this gap, a study was commissioned to provide data specific to NCV on the status of colleges at the time in relation to meeting the needs of young school leavers and also the challenges that colleges face in effectively preparing youth for the labour market. The research was designed to comprise 2 waves or phases. Wave 1 was an in-college survey of NCV students who were in NCV 2 to 4, and it was conducted in 30 FET colleges in 2010. And then in 2010, around 18,131 learners were surveyed. Wave 2 of the survey is the traces study of those same students who, once they had graduated from the colleges and been in the labour market for some time. And this wave was carried out earlier this year, 2015, between March and June, I think. And the aim of this wave is to examine the experiences of young people on leaving the TVET colleges and during their attempts to enter the labour market. And 3,113 responded and agreed to participate in the telephone survey, which was a response rate of 37%, which we were very happy with. We think that was excellent after five years. So now, if we look at the distribution of the respondents according to the level that they were studying in 2010, we can see that half were in NCV 2 in 2010, a third were in NCV 3, and about 16% were in NCV 4. So by 2015, we would have expected that most of these students would have completed their NCV qualifications, even given a few extra years for repeating. But this is not the case, unfortunately, and most students who enroll for NCV do not complete. Only 38% of our respondents had completed their NCV 4 by 2015. And only a very small number was still studying, 4% was still studying towards their NCV 4 in 2015. As you can see, only 31% of NCV 2 students and 41% of NCV 3 students had completed their NCV qualification. And even those who were in NCV 4, only just over half finished their NCV qualification. Even if we look at it by field of study, you can see that regardless of the course they're doing, they're not finishing. With the exception of a course called Safety and Society, where just over half managed to complete their qualification. For all the other courses that people have been studying, more than half did not complete their NCV qualification. And it goes up to like 91% for general management, 88% for agriculture. So the biggest reason reason, one of the biggest reasons given by respondents for not completing their NCV qualification was lack of finance. However, 60% of these respondents were on a bursary in 2010. And these students could have continued to be eligible for this bursary if they had completed each year in the stipulated time. National policy states that students will get a bursary to complete 1 year of study over 2 years in an NCV in a college. So this shows that most students are not able to complete their studies in a stipulated time in order to be eligible to continue getting the bursary, and thus clearly had to find their own funds to pay for their own studies, which was, I think, causing a problem and maybe a reason why many were dropping out. Other reasons given, they got a job, they felt they were doing the wrong course, or they moved to NCV4. So those are some of the reasons given for not completing their NCV4 qualification. So we did a regression analysis to try and see who was most likely to complete the NCV4 qualification. And we found that younger students were more likely than older students to complete. Females were more likely than males. Colored, Indian, and white students were more likely than black students to finish, but that could just be a result of the fact that, 92% of respondents were African, so it's definitely more likely that there would be larger numbers not finishing. Those who lived in smaller households were more likely to have completed than those living in larger households. Interestingly, I think, those who lived in informal accommodation or in traditional dwellings were more likely to have completed NCV4 than those who lived in informal accommodation. I think this could perhaps be another area where we could look into what's going on there. To a small extent, those studying in their provinces of origin were more likely than those studying outside their provinces of origin to complete. Those who were in NCV4, NCV3 2010, as you would expect, were more likely to have finished than those who were in NCV2. And then those who got a bursary were more likely to have completed than those who didn't have a bursary in 2010. Okay. So what kind of employment are people getting? It seems that many employers prefer to employ people on a short-term basis. You can see that in terms of the jobs that, or the most recent jobs that respondents have held, 3/4 were employed in contract or informal positions, and only 23% were in permanent employment. The types of employers, private companies are the most common or frequent employer of TVET students, followed by government. Men seem to predominate slightly among those working in the private sector, while women seem to predominate in the public sector. Okay, then on this graph we can see the employment status by whether or not they've completed their degree, their NCV qualification or not. And it would seem that having an NCV qualification makes only a really small difference as to whether they find employment or not, regardless of the kind of employment. So you can see 68% of those who completed the NCV had found employment, compared to 61% who didn't complete the NCV qualification. Okay, but completing the NCV qualification though seems to make no difference to whether or not respondents find a permanent job. Whether you completed or you didn't complete, about 23%, only 23% of each category was in permanent employment. Okay. Turning to the amounts earned, we can see that the gross earnings are very low. More than 50% earning less than 3,000 rand a month. It's possible that this low income of those employed may be the reason why many of them are still living with families. And I also think that this low income, together with the fact that very few have permanent jobs, is an area of concern and could be an indicator that NCV students are not really considered to be employable. So females are earning less than males. 47% of males were earning less than 3,000 Rand a month compared to 67% of females. And at the other opposite end, of those earning above 9,000, this applied to 9% of males and 4% of females. Okay, so a summary of the main findings. I think that the TRACES study is showing us that the pathway into employment via the NCV qualification is difficult. Most students who enroll for the NCV do not complete the NCV 4. They either move to other courses of study or go from trying to find employment to varying degrees of success. Lack of finance is still the main reason for not completing the NCV qualification. Around 64% have been able to find employment at some stage over those 5 years. But if we take the respondents as a whole, not as a level, in any given year, only around half were employed at each year. But for those who do find employment, employment is impermanent, and the majority earn very low, very poorly. Most of the jobs are in the private sector and are sourced through personal and family connections, and those who complete are only slightly more likely to have employment than those who do not complete. So it doesn't seem that NCV4 gives any advantage to students in the labour market, and particularly in finding employment.